All right, so this video will be on the delivery and then postpartum, which is sometimes called the fourth trimester. My labor and delivery pretty much went by the book up to a certain point and according to the birth plan that I wanted. My water did break at home. It was nighttime. We were watching TV and it was pretty much what I expected, you know, huge gush of water and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't quite prepared for it to keep gushing. And every woman's different. A lot of women don't have their water break until they're at the hospital. So you know, every woman's different. Every pregnancy is different. But that's kind of how mine worked out. I hadn't really stocked up on pads too much. I kind of wish I had. I think I went through most of my stash just laboring at home with all the amniotic fluid that I was losing. So I was not at all prepared for that. So one thing I would recommend, go ahead and stock up on pads because you're going to need them after the birth. You know, the really heavy duty type. And if your water does break while you're at home, you're going to need them then. So go ahead and stock up. Don't put that off like I did. So my water broke. I tried to labor at home as long as I could. I think my water broke at 9:30. We ended up going to the hospital at 3:30 in the morning. So I labored for about 6 hours, although I didn't really have contractions until 2 hours or so after my water broke. So it was really only 4 hours of contractions. But I had progressed to what is traditionally considered active labor at that point by the time I got to the hospital, which would be the 4 centimeters. I had wanted to labor at home as much as possible, but I wasn't quite prepared for the uncomfortableness of my water breaking. I didn't feel comfortable sitting on furniture or in bed because I didn't want to make a mess on anything. So I ended up sitting on my birthing ball for those 4 to 6 hours, and that was rather uncomfortable. So it was sort of a relief when I got to the hospital and I could lay in the bed and not worry about making a mess because, you know, they've got it all taken care of. So that surprised me a little bit that I was so relieved to actually get to the hospital when my plan was to have that be the very last, you know, portion of the labor. Everything went really well when I got to the hospital. There were a few issues with the monitor, what do they call it? The fetal monitor that they use to monitor the baby's status, and then it monitors your contractions. I was supposed to get a wireless one, but they were having issues with the computer, and it was all kind of crazy, but it ended up working out. They did intermittent monitoring, so like every hour they would monitor me for like 20 minutes. And then I think they finally got the Wi-Fi working, but it wouldn't stay on. It kept falling off. So I don't know. It ended up working out. I was on my feet about maybe a third of the time. I was actually lying down quite a bit because I was tired. I hadn't slept. You know, she started coming in the middle of the night, so it didn't really give me an opportunity to sleep any. So I was pretty tired. But everything went really well. I mean, I certainly felt the contractions, but I didn't feel like I needed pain medication. In fact, I don't think I thought once about pain medication because I went into it knowing that, you know, I wasn't going to do that and that I could do it. I had a lot of self-confidence that I could get through the contractions by myself, and that really helped. And I had my doula there and I had my husband there, and they were both really supportive, and they would do kind of distraction things when it seemed that my contractions were at their peak. So they would like massage my hands and talk to me and, you know, whatever whatever I needed at the moment. My doula was really great about keeping me hydrated too, something you don't always think about. So definitely, if you don't have a doula, if it's just your birth partner there, your husband or whoever, make sure they know to give you sips of water on a regular basis, and chapstick is really helpful too, to have with you. So then I got to the pushing stage, and I had gotten through the contractions. I was like, yes, I can do this, I can handle this. Unfortunately, the pushing stage did not go so well, primarily because she was sunny side up, which means that instead of, they're supposed to come through the birth canal face down, she was face up. So it made things very difficult. She was sort of stuck in my pelvis. I couldn't quite push her out. So after several hours of pushing, they brought the surgeon in, because I had a midwife. She was the one who was on call, and she was awesome. But they brought in the surgeon to assess me, and he determined that I would probably need a C-section, but he was willing to do use the vacuum to try and get her out, but that might ultimately end in a C-section as well. And so I had a choice of either of the two, and that was where I really felt like the doula helped me, because while she couldn't tell me what to do, she certainly supported my decision to do the vacuum, and I felt like she had seen enough births that her opinion had some weight. And then my husband, who had never seen any births before, was super enthusiastic and super behind me, and so that helped me as well. And that really, because I was so tired at that point, I was almost ready to go to C-section just out of sheer exhaustion. But we went with the vacuum, and everything worked out fine. And I also did have to have an episiotomy. So there were 2 interventions that were outside of my birth plan that had to be incorporated. I did have to have Pitocin after the birth to help with bleeding, because I had pushed for so long. They were concerned, there was some concern, I guess, of losing too much blood. In actuality, I think I was probably fine without it, but they did give me Pitocin, and I was okay with that because the baby had already been born at that point. But I was able to hold her. Everything went fine. I was able to hold her. I was able to breastfeed right after she was born. That was great. Yeah, so that was the birth. I did have a hospital bag packed as far as what you need in your hospital bag. I think I packed a lot of stuff I didn't really use. I did end up wearing the hospital gown. I had planned to wear my own clothing, but found that it was just, yes, there's limited modesty in the gown, but when you're giving birth, does it really matter? I kind of threw it all out the door when I was in the hospital. It was just like, okay, I'm doing this, modesty be damned, I'm going in all the way, and the doula did end up having me put on a gown backwards, so I had like a gown in the front and a gown in the back, which honestly was plenty of modesty for me. And then you're not getting your own clothes dirty, during the labor. So I never really wore my own clothes until I left. Now, of course, I only stayed one night. Some people who maybe have to stay a couple days, I could see wanting to at some point change into your own pajamas or robe or something like that. I did have slipper socks that I wore after the delivery. I did bring shower shoes for the shower at the hospital, which I would recommend. Chapstick, super important. I brought my makeup, which I didn't end up applying until the next day. But it was nice to have that for pictures. I didn't use a whole lot of makeup, just, enough that I didn't feel like I looked like The Walking Dead or something. But yeah, that was really all I needed. We brought a tablet to listen to Spotify, because they had Wi-Fi at the hospital. So I was able to listen to music that suited me during labor, which was nice. And we certainly used that to check email and stuff in the recovery room and take pictures. But other than that, I didn't really need a whole lot. Now, as far as postpartum, I feel like they don't prepare you for postpartum very well. I had gotten through the labor, I had gotten through the delivery. I felt like, okay, all the pain is behind me. it's not. It depends on, how much tearing you might have. I had 2 third-degree tears in addition to the episiotomy. So I've got stitches, you got to recover from that. And I was doing a lot of pushing. So, my muscles were tired. So every woman is going to be different about how she feels postpartum. For me, though, there was a lot of recovery time, and I kind of pushed myself a little too hard right after, a couple days after the hospital. I was going up and down steps and trying to do stuff, and I should have kept myself more in bed than I did. Definitely rely on the help of your family members and your friends as much as possible. See if you can freeze some meals ahead of time, or have some people who are willing to get you takeout, or bring you some meals during your recovery. That's super important. I had my parents here, and that helped a lot. As far as products, I did buy some things in advance for that postpartum period. I talked about needing to have a lot of pads earlier. Seriously, you're supposed to, every time you use the bathroom, you're supposed to put on a new pad. So stock up. Get them cheap and stock up. I did get some special ones for the postpartum period from Vitacost. These are called NatraCare, and they're the new Mother Natural maternity pads. They're organic, cotton, all kinds of good stuff, chemical free. They put tons of chemicals in the pads that we use. I did find these were really nice to use. They don't have wings, which I don't particularly like, but they were, absorbent enough that you can use them during that postpartum period. I also got Mother Love Sits Bath Spray, and I believe I got this at Vitacost as well. But it's basically just a witch hazel type and different herbs and oils that are supposed to help with healing, that you can spray on your areas that need healing. I don't really feel like that helped any better than anything else. Like they give you Dermaplast in the hospital. I hated the Dermaplast. I did not like that. So yeah, I guess this is a little more natural than the Dermaplast, but I don't know that it particularly helped anything. It was sort of soothing. You can also use just regular witch hazel for that. I also bought the Honest Company Organic Nipple Balm, which looks like that. And it's basically just a cream that you can use especially when you're first breastfeeding, if you've got, bad latches that are causing cracking or bleeding or anything like that. It can be really uncomfortable. So it's a good soothing thing to kind of help with healing there. And it's totally safe for the baby, so you don't have to wipe it off before you breastfeed. I'd also recommend grabbing whatever supplies you can from the hospital. Ask the nurse if you can take some extra supplies home with you, especially if you're only staying one night and you're going home, because some of that stuff's really helpful. And just to give you an idea what some of the stuff looks like they covered it in one of our classes, but if you don't take a class, I was not prepared for this kind of stuff. The underwear they give you is this mesh underwear, and takes up the whole screen. It looks like this, so it's super stretchy. But yeah, that's what it looks like. And then the pads that they have you use are ginormous. So that's the pad folded up. This is the pad, guys. They're huge, huge. But that just gives you an idea of what to expect too, as far as the bleeding. And then they also give you these ice packs, which you kind of crack and then they get cold. And they're huge. But they kind of lay on top of the pad. And then you can also ask for additional chucks, which are these just kind of pads like this that they lay on the hospital bed. But if you're concerned about, you know, initially getting anything on your sheets or anything like that, you can use a couple of these. I didn't actually have to worry about any of that, but so I have several left over. But they'll also give you a sitz bath, which is really good to use. They'll give you a peri bottle, which you'll be using constantly. And Dermaplast, you can take your Dermaplast home with you. I didn't because I didn't like it. It's too chemically. But, so yeah, that's a lot of the products that I used postpartum. Also, once I started breastfeeding, I started taking an additional vitamin, D3. And the brand I got was MRM Vegan Vitamin D3 5000 IU. And that's also available on VitaCost. And the reason for that is D3 is a D vitamin that we get from the sunlight. I believe we also get it through dairy products. So if you're vegan, it's maybe a little harder to get that D3. Certainly taking your baby out into the sun is a way to get them D3. But since my baby was born more towards the winter months, I thought it might be a good idea to take this supplement, and then she'd be getting the D3 through my breast milk. And so she'd have enough there. I think that covers everything. But if you have any questions or things that I didn't cover that you're curious about, or any comments, feel free to put them below. And if there's enough interest in additional things, I can certainly do another video later. But thank you for going through my pregnancy journey with me, and stay tuned to more videos in the future. Hi! I have one more thing that I'd like to add. I forgot to mention it when I was shooting, so I'm going to add it to this video in post. I wanted to talk a little bit about insurance. And I have 2 tips for you about your insurance and your bills that will help you save a little bit of money. The first tip is, before your baby is born, do your research about how your insurance will change once you add the baby to your plan or your husband's plan. Most insurances, that deductible is going to go up unless you already have children. You may have a change in an HRA balance if you have an HRA plan, different things like that. So definitely figure out how it's going to work. If you have any questions or you're not 100% sure on something, check with your benefits department, check with your insurance, and make sure you know how it works. For me personally, I had an HRA plan, and I knew that my deductible would go up when I added my daughter, but I just made the assumption that my HRA balance would also increase. And in actuality, it decreased, because what they did is they took, I started out the year with $500 in my HRA bucket, and I thought they would just add $250 for my daughter, but instead they took the $750 I would have had for the year and they prorated it. So in essence, they changed that $500 I had to $350. So I actually lost $150 and had an increased deductible. So in retrospect, I would have probably researched my husband's insurance a little better to see if it made sense to move her over there. Another thing you want to keep in mind, if you are adding your child to your own plan, that the day that they get added and that deductible goes up is also the day that all your bills are going to get filed. So even though you've been seeing your doctor, in a lot of cases they don't actually file the claim until after the baby's born. So all those big expenses are going to hit at the same time that your deductible increases. So just something to keep in mind. My second tip is to really pay attention to all of those bills, all of those EOBs, all the claims that come through, and make sure that everything's getting filed properly and paid for properly, so the bill, you're not paying more than you should be. I had several instances, all completely different, where I almost paid too much money. The first, I received a bill in the mail where they had not even filed my insurance. What often happens when you add a child, they give you, like 30 days to add your child. So in a lot of cases, they'll try and verify that insurance before your child is actually added to the insurance officially. So then they'll just send you the bill because they don't have the insurance information. So I had to call them up, get that straightened out, have them refile it with the insurance. I had an instance where my diabetic claims were not covered for seeing the nutritionist. And I was told by my insurance that it was because the service was not covered. I kind of took them at their word for that, went ahead and made a payment, got a whole bunch more bills in the mail. Really didn't want to pay those, so I called the insurance back to fight the claim and was told that, oh no, it wasn't because the service wasn't covered. They were denied because the diabetic clinic had filed everything incorrectly. So then they told me how it needed to be filed. I turned around, called the diabetic clinic, got it straightened out, and they refiled everything for me. You really do have to be the middleman here. Unfortunately, insurance really doesn't want to talk to the doctor's offices and vice versa. So it's a pain, but you really need to do it. I think I had one other issue. Oh, it was my refund. Typically, or at least with my doctor's office, they want payments up front while you're seeing the doctor on a monthly basis. So I was on a payment plan where I paid a certain amount based on what they thought I would be paying with my insurance. Well, it turns out that most of that was covered by my insurance and I was able to get a refund. When I got the refund check in the mail, it was a little bit short because I had followed everything to a T and I knew exactly what they should be sending me. When I called back, I found out that one of the visits where I had seen the doctor before I was pregnant, had not been paid. And so they had taken that bill off of my refund. Called the insurance office. Oh yes, they did send a check. Here was the check number. So I call the doctor's office back and, oh, looks like we misapplied that check. So, and that was like a $200 charge. So when all was said and done with all those different things that happened, I think it was probably like $1,000 that I could have paid in error that I didn't need to pay. So it's super important. If you're not good at math, find someone else in your family, friend or family member who can help you. Just keep track of everything and try your best. I know it's hard because they're difficult to understand, and I think they make it that way on purpose. They kind of rely on a little bit of apathy from people in order to get paid. But you need to be an advocate for yourself and make sure that you're not getting taken advantage of. So those are the final tips that I wanted to make sure I let you know, so you can be prepared.